And now, a workshop of the McAllen City Commission. All workshops are open to the public in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. These workshops allow for detailed staff presentations.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order. This is a joint workshop with the McAllen Public Utility Board, and we will begin with item number 1, review of employee health plan.
Good day, Commissioners, board members, and Chairman. Today we will review our health plan performance since October 2022. We're going to provide some insights as well as to take a moment to look at our expectations for next fiscal year. We have consistently used the data to understand our health population, and sometimes that data clearly shows direct financial impact, while at other times it helps identify correlations that better explain plan experiences. Since 2022, we have been decentralizing our healthcare model to find the most efficient, cost-effective, and highest quality care, with benefits such as direct primary care, cash-based ancillary care, and international RX. We now have diverse data points from various vendors. Providing direct financial impact has become a bit more complex. To address this, we partnered with Veracity, a third-party company specializing in evaluating fragmented healthcare models and providing thorough analytics. Veracity analyzes data down to the member level, allowing us to see the actual outcome of our health programs. While we had hoped to present an even more robust reporting today, we are in the final touches of implementation with this software in this company. Nevertheless, there is already ample data available for us to provide some very, very great insights for you today in today's presentation. Once fully implemented, we hope to provide regular reporting to you as our elected bodies to keep you informed as to the healthcare status. To start our first focus area, I will now invite Kim from Veracity to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners and board members, for having me as a guest at your meeting. I'm excited to share some initial results of our analysis with you. One thing to note is that our reporting is based on incurred dates or the dates of service. You're probably used to seeing things based on paid date when the checks were written. We report currently on incurred dates because we are analyzing a person's use of ER, so those tend to happen based on the date of service, not on the date somebody's in the it's the date that somebody's in the hospital, not when the check gets paid. I am going to give you some highlights, and then we will dive a little deeper into the data. I will try not to bore you too much with my tables, but let's get started on the highlights. Based on the data we analyzed from the implementation in October of 22 through current, for us, that is paid claims through March 31st of 2024, we are projecting that plan medical spend will hold stable or decrease slightly by the end of the 2024 benefit year. We're also seeing evidence related to reducing risk, which are lab values such as hemoglobin A1Cs, that's a measure of glucose in diabetics, blood pressure, and we are seeing a remarkable drop in ER usage. We did do a quick tenure analysis to account for some of the turnover that happens in your population. One thing to note is that employees who stay more than 24 months, they actually have the highest per member per month spend, but they are trending favorably, and spouses probably need to be managed. They tend to have higher spend. In 2024, year to date, there were 186 members who have fewer than 6 months of tenure, which means they've only been an employee for 6 months or less. And of those, only about 33% of them have had a visit with the DPC. So we think that educating new members about the DPC, again, is warranted. And of the 124 who hadn't visited the DPC, only 7 had claims, but 1 was a high-cost member. So that person probably could have used some primary care before they became a high-cost member. A high-cost member, for those who might not know, is somebody who has over $50,000 in spend during the plan year. In 2023, there are 28 high-cost members, and they represent 58.2% of the plan spend. That's a significant amount of the spend associated with a small number of people. You did have quite a few members who had cancers that are related to that high-cost spend. The trend is looking better for 2024. There are about 10 high-cost members. They do represent 53% of the medical spend year to date. We took a look at what we call core conditions in the population. These are from the medical claims we got from United Healthcare. Core conditions are common conditions that tend to be spend drivers in your population, but are also conditions that are could be managed by the DPC. These are things like hypertension, diabetes, type 2, obesity, asthma, ischemic heart disease. So this year, year to date, there are 244 members based on the claims. 7.6% of those claims that have one or more conditions, and they account for 42.4% of your medical spend so far. It's not surprising that these conditions are prevalent because they're prevalent in the United States. It's not a unique problem to the city of McAllen, but we through our book of business, we have seen these conditions respond well to good primary care. So if all of these observations that I've mentioned above hold true for the rest of the year, we think that the DPC appears to be favorably influencing medical spend, which is stable and may decrease slightly by the end of the year. And medical events is a big area. Inpatient admissions are down significantly, and ER visits are down and lower than the national norms. And one piece of anecdotal information, in the analysis we noted that there was a family in prior years that was using ER visits for their primary care. They would be seen for sore throats, earaches, things that can be taken care of at the DPC. And this year they have been seen by the DPC, and they are not using the ER as their primary care. The other area which always shows promise before you start seeing medical spend drop is risk modification. And what do I mean by that? Lab values. So most members who have gone to the DPC have either held or decreased their risk by single risk factors for cholesterol, blood pressure, hemoglobin A1C. Okay. Now some of the data to support this. This is the financial foundation. This is your current total insured population, again, through March 31st of this year. Medical spend is projected to hold stable or decrease slightly. And planned pharmacy spend is up, but we expect to see that when people are getting the care they need, they're filling the medications that they need to be taking to control their spend. So we expect pharmacy to go up before medical spend goes down altogether. Okay. This is a breakdown of your high cost members between the prior benefit year and this year to date. And as a reminder, in 2023, your high cost members represented 58.2% of your medical spend. You had a rough year in 2023. You had quite a few people with cancer, end-stage renal diseases, a lot of inpatient hospital stays. Some of those would have responded well to DPC, but the cancers, that probably would not have changed your story at this point. So this year's looking better. There are still a few people with cancer, but you can see that in 2024, some of the high cost spend is associated with time limited things like injuries, broken arm, hernia, and sepsis. Now we're looking at the core conditions that I was talking about, and what we've highlighted here are two major conditions that are driving your spend and are very responsive to good primary care, and that's diabetes type 2 and hypertension. And Note that this is claims-based. In the claims, you've got 73 diabetics. We noted that the DPC was able to pick up a few more diabetics that you didn't know about with their lab values. So another sign that things are moving in the right direction.
I just want to clarify, when she talks about the number of diabetics and she says it's claims-based, so again, in the implementation, we had to give a historic claims file, and that's how she's determining the diabetic population. We actually have about 300 diabetics in our typical population, and our typical population actually increased last year by another 73 because of those that were identified through the direct primary care. So over time, the claims history with Veracity will show all of those diabetics. It's just in the period of time that the history was downloaded into the system, only 73 had claims that were triggered as diabetic
That's correct.
diagnosis.
And we actually have a strict definition too, that you have to have had two visits with that diagnosis on it. So they just may not have built up enough claims to have been identified as a diabetic. And this is just another look at these core conditions and how they're trending over time. And you can see, again, spouses need to be encouraged to use the DPC. They tend to have a higher per member per month spend, even in the core conditions. All right. DPC. On spend. Yes. I don't have that slide. Okay. We took a look at the what we could get out of the DPC's medical electronic records, and the office visits are increasing. At this point, we're comparing a whole benefit year 2023 against half of 2024. So more people are using the clinic, and we calculated based on what an office claim would have been paid by United Healthcare in Texas, and we estimated this is what the estimated billed amount that you're seeing is the number of office encounters based on the money that United Healthcare would have billed for had those claims gone through the United Healthcare claim system. So you can see that is potential savings there because those are covered by the membership. The other area of savings is the international RX plan. So the prescriptions filled by international RX showed a savings of $112,000 when compared to members filling the same medications through Optum RX. You still have members who are filling those prescriptions through Optum RX. So our advice would be to encourage them to fill them through international RX. When you compare the international RX savings comparing to the estimated retail price of those drugs, the savings is about $229,000 just for the 6 months. Health risk modification, I mentioned, is the thing that we start to see improve before we see spend come down. So these are good signs that, so BMI is, you've probably heard the body mass index, it's a sign of weight. So 87% of the population held their risk level. We would like to see more decrease the risk level, and that will come in time. The blood pressure measurements made, 24% of the population, almost a quarter of the population decreased their risk level there. Almost a third dropped their LDL, their part of the cholesterol reading, and 18% of the diabetics decreased their hemoglobin A1C, and again, that's a measure of how well glucose is being controlled. And then here is another indication DPC is doing its job. Medical events are things like inpatient stays, ER usage, how long is somebody in the hospital, and we see a dramatic drop in 2024 of people who are being admitted. ER use has dropped dramatically. Average length of stay has gone up, but that's really more of an indicator that the people who are being admitted are truly sick and need to be in the hospital.
Thank you, moments to Frontier Direct Care to also recap the trends that they're seeing since the implementation of the program in October of 2022. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, great. Thank you again, City Commissioners and board members, for having us today and for allowing us to serve your population alongside you. It's been really, you all have continued to make us better, and it's been a joy to collaborate with Jolie and her team on serving the population. When we talk about what direct primary care does, it really comes into rearrange the incentives. And so a lot of that, you have the misaligned incentives of increased cost, decreased quality, and decreased access. We watch that through things like medical trend, where you kind of get put into more cost sharing. And so we want to fix that. So the goal of joining forces with the city was to rearrange those incentives on the next slide. And so we see aligned incentives, that we increase access, we improve outcomes, and we decrease costs. And we look about that cost at every encounter. So we're really looking at some like per member per month math, things like that, to really drive down what they're spending. They may need more to be procured, but ultimately we're getting those needs at a higher value. And so we look at that, we see 104% increase in primary care. The Net Promoter Score, which is kind of the objective way for us to gain satisfaction, is at a 94, which is really, really good. That's better than Apple, to put it in perspective. And then your 87% rate of Medicare. So what the rate is that the federal government pays for primary care services based on our value of what we're giving you for your primary care services, you're obtaining it less than what the federal government could get it for. When we look at what Kim kind of brought up was leading and lagging indicators. And so the leading indicators is we wanted to increase primary care, increase chronic disease engagement, increase health plan utilization, so that the thing you're paying for people, they're actually using, and it's actually impacting their quality of life. And we also wanted to increase transparency, partnering with folks like Veracity to make sure that we're paying attention to the data, not just doing a network strategy and seeing what happens, but really monitoring and refining this program together in lifetime. The lagging indicators of those is that we decrease ER admissions, we decrease inpatient admissions, we decrease need for like specialists and things like that, as well as decreasing cost at each encounter. Next slide. So in increasing access, we have, for instance, we give every one of the personal primary care providers, they get the personal cell phone gets given to each member, so they have direct access to their primary care provider. Current to date, 71% of your active population, we're not just saying people that just use the health plan, but those that are enrolled, 71% have engaged through telemedicine with their direct primary care provider at Frontier. That's 20 points higher probably than most typical health plan utilization would be. Usually about 50% is what we see. So we've been able to become the first call, the front door for their health care. On top of that, that 94% NPS or that 94 NPS score really shows that, like, hey, 9 out of 10 of these people are saying, I'd recommend this to somebody to use this service myself. And so we're really proud about that stat. Next slide. When we look at increasing utilization, it really is about keeping primary care primary. And so obviously we don't want to refer for things, right? Like an ER visit for a sore throat is the wrong way to use the healthcare industry. And so a lot of that primary care stuff, when it's managed and proactively delivered, mitigates finding out that you have a diabetic on your plan by an ER visit. Instead, you're finding that out through a health fair and engaging in some labs and things that aren't a catastrophic event for that person or the health plan itself. So we see in your 2022 plan year that your average appointment was about 2.4 appointments per member per year. When we get into having direct primary care in the plan in 2023, we see that jump up to nearly 5 and continue to increase as we move into 2024, which year-to-date increase over your benchmark year of 2022 is 104% of primary care. So twice the primary care of what you were getting with a network strategy. And then we're also getting increasing efficiency. So one thing I want to note is that direct access, and once you get in with your doctor, you have that relationship. Now we're able to text and engage that person without taking time off for a full-on appointment. So you see that normalizing of 2.9% increase in in-person appointments. So they're using it. They're getting roughly 1,000 appointments a month is what you're using as a city. But you watch that efficiency increase in virtual appointments. That's gone up almost 65% in the past year. So they're really engaging efficiently in the health plan, which we love to see that. Next slide. When we look at that delivering coordinated care and mitigating network claims, so one thing is that we obtain primary care cheaper, right? So we've got that at 87%. So there's a value in that. And then we look at what are we carving out of people going to the network and paying a higher dollar for that same kind of service. And so we see that in this, we've reduced the network claims pretty substantially there. And so we see a reduction in network specialist usage by 18%. On top of that, we look at, referral rates. When we look at your network strategies and typical network doctors, they're referring at about a 34% rate. When we keep primary care primary and we're not making that referral because it's not warranted and we're able to do things at the top of our license, our referral rate's at about 7%. So keeping primary care primary. And then regaining control of the referral. People liking and using this allows them to trust us as we tell them where to go obtain the next value of care. Next slide. But the big thing, just like as Kim and Veracity, it was really getting those cost drivers. And I think it's most people don't understand, a few people on your plan can drive 50 and 60% of the plan spend. We're talking probably less than 1%, right? And so a massive thing to get in front of them and engage them and improve their life and their A1C scores. And we understand that a network strategy, that's a challenge, right? You've got some people that are just trying to look at claims and make phone calls to somebody, but with us, when they come in and they are identified, we identified 542 diabetics in our population. Those are unique individuals with an A1C score in a pre-diabetic or diabetic, level. And then when we engage them, we know that we engaged them because we met them in person and took their blood. So that's 100% engagement. And when we look at their ability to maintain and improve their scores with that kind of engagement and that kind of support, we see 95% maintained and improved in your business year 23. And in 24 right now, we're seeing about 97% of them are able to maintain and improve their diabetic health, which brings the question of what's not happening to the plan, right? When we're identifying those folks in health fairs, we're not getting ER visits, which brings down that utilization. But left a little stat there from the government around what the cost is on an average spend of a diabetic on a health plan, just to let you do some math if you'd like to. Next slide. So on this chart is illustrative, but just kind of giving you the framework of where we're trying to go to beat the trend, right? We don't want to continue to let the health plan trend up 5% or 7% year over year. We really want to be able to draw that down and then flatten it, and like we've been able to do over the last couple of years. Like we said, those goals of improving access, driving utilization, improving the customer experience all drive to them establishing trust with their primary care provider, which allows us to improve the population health and procure their extra needs for a whole lot less, which mitigates network claims and allows you to really change the model to not be something where we're walking into an ER with an insurance card and we're actually getting a good value out of our healthcare plan. And so moving into the next slide, we look at procuring primary care for less. And so when we look at that, that's where we talk about the value of the membership cost as well as the number of appointments that they're using. And then if you looked at the Medicare rate for those things, that's what they would typically be charged. And then the cost per appointment, we're seeing that that's driving down. So the more they use this, the more cost efficient it gets. And so we want to drive that utilization where we're seeing the rate of care be well below the federal levels. And so we see that appointment value. So this is the value of the appointments we did for you. Had you secured them at the government rate, would have been there. And so obviously the network rates are typically about 140 to 220% of Medicare. So when you're obtaining that care for 87%, you're getting an extreme value for the level of care that you're getting. And so there's some all-time stats there. And then the next slide, again, revisiting leading and lagging indicators. We see that 104% increase in primary care, 178 new diabetics engaged, most of them not actually having to file a network claim, which is really good. 71% utilizing the direct primary care relationship, and then the increase in transparency with partnering and bringing in Veracity and working with the city to do that, as well as our direct pay and our ability to direct contract on things like imaging, labs, working with International RX on pharmacy steerage and those things like that as well. The lagging indicators that come through is you see that decrease in ER admission rate is down 75%. The decrease in inpatient admission rate is down 81%. The decrease in specialist referrals is down 20% or 18%. And the decrease in cost, right, the Medicare services for your primary care and the referral rates are making this a much more efficient health plan going forward. Next slide. When we try to look at the value of direct primary care, there are lots of ways to look at this. So I kind of took 3 slices of your data that we get from your carrier. And looking at this business year 23 and 24, we can look at it as in a procurement of cost of primary care services. So that's kind of the top table showing you're securing that at a very good percentage of Medicare. And then we look at the membership cost based on the UHC inpatient and ER mitigation. So those people not going. When I take the average cost of those visits and then kind of flesh that out into an economic impact, you can see the economic impact there in that area. In addition, when we look at this, right, like we want to make sure we're not following trend, that we're really going against the trend and we're beginning to decrease cost. And so if we apply trend to your 2022 spend, in 2023, you should have spent about $10.3 million in medical claims, and in 2024, the projection spend should be about $10.9 million. Your current projected spend in 2024 is down to about $8.8 million, and your spend in 2023 was $8.9 million. Both of those are a savings compared to what you spent in 2022 in medical claims. It's not pharmacy claims, just medical claims. It's not fixed costs, it's just medical claims. Next slide. But the real thing we have to get into, and Veracity had a great sheet there, was talking about rates, right? And so it's about positioning each member of your health plan to be in the best possible scenario to procure their health care at the highest value for their dollar. And so when we look at that, your PMPM rates here, this is what we're looking at. So the medical claims in 22 were about $316.93 per member per month. In 2023, your network medical claims dropped to $177.02 per member per month. The DPC, with our ancillary referrals and membership charges, added an additional $68.45 to that $177. And then you can see in 2024 where the rates are sitting now. That now combined together, you've got about $89 in network claims and about $89 in direct primary care claims. I'll let you all do the math.
Thank you, Joe. As promised, I wanted to give you just a glimpse into next fiscal year so that you can know what we're going to be bringing before you in the month of July as an action item. The next fiscal year is based on the positive trends that we've seen this year. However, due to our lack of surplus historically and the need to cover our prior deficits, which is what we talked about previously this last couple meetings ago, we do not have a margin for unexpected claims. So while the trends give us the good numbers that we believe we can cover next year's claims with the budget as forecasted, it does not give us any room for the surprises. As a result, we wanted to talk to you about some potential options that we would like to bring to you for action in July. The current fiscal year ending working capital is expected to be at just about $15,000. That's less than one claim, maybe 2. So it's coming in real tight. It is covering it, but it's coming in real tight. After discussing with the city manager, the options that are before you for consideration for our July action item would be first to consider a increase to the premium on the city side only. It is a recommendation not to touch the employee contribution end of this. And the reason why is because we have spent the last several years working very strategically to design this health plan and the overall program, and we've educated the employees that in transitioning to the direct primary care and international pharmacy and using the programs as we've set it up are strategically being put into place to decrease overall expenses and to pass that on to the employees as well. We believe that the employee participation rate has been very strong. We've seen, as you heard from both Veracity and from Frontier, the benefits of what we're seeing from the DPC usage. And we believe that this is something that we should encourage the employees by not passing along a premium increase this year that would offset any kind of possible COLA or even just being able to combat inflation. And so the $10 contribution for the city side alone would be $220,000. About $151,000 of that would be general fund. The second and the third options that we'll be bringing before you for consideration, and I'm looking for hopeful feedback today, would be an increase to the ER copay. Our ER copay currently stands at $250 per admission. This is fairly low in light of many of our peers, and it's also fairly low when you're trying to deter the person that uses the ER for a sinus infection. And so we are recommending that to go to $500 per use. And then, just so you know, if somebody gets admitted to the hospital through the ER, that copay actually gets waived because it becomes a true situation. So that copay only applies to those that are just seen in the ER and discharged. The urgent care, same understanding. The copay is fairly low. It's not enough to deter. We are recommending it go from $50 to $100. I'd also like to point out that we've now put all of these benefits in place where people don't have to go to the ER now for these things. They have the primary care and the urgent care through through Frontier. We've also got surgical negotiations and international pharmacy and all these things that we're doing to have no cost to the employee. So we believe that this is actually a perfect timing to consider the copay changes to continue that direct steerage. I'd like to open it up now for questions on either the presentation from Veracity, Frontier, or discussion on the possible action items in July.
Any questions?
The options offered to the employees for ER and urgent care is 24/7 as well?
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
At Frontier.
They can call and text us any time of the day or night.
But the clinics are closed on.
The clinics are closed, yeah, so.
Clinic, yeah, and I would expect that a lot of ER urgent care visits are probably, let's just say, after hours or late hours. There's a comfort in someone seeing, right, especially if you have a dependent or a child, someone inspecting or just physically seeing, right, the ailment.
Because that's the only reason you leave.
Right.
You know, otherwise you would wait till the next morning if you don't feel it's an emergency or maybe
Correct.
a little more severe.
But what we're able to do now is that parent that's contemplating at 8 o'clock in the evening what to do, they're starting to see the onset of symptoms of something, is now they're able to actually text and call their provider at that hour to determine if it's something that can be treated at home, if it's something that the provider needs to send in a script for right then and there to a 24-hour pharmacy, and or it's something that the provider is actually going to say, you know what, I believe you need to go to the ER for this, and now they have a justifiable, you know, somebody confirming this is worth going to the ER.
Okay. So maybe more educational as well.
Sure.
Right, to the employees. You know, I understand it acts as a deterrent, but doubling each of them, there's a bigger savings on the ER one, and I know the ER is maybe different, but some of the urgent care, the savings of $10,000 on this type of overall budget, but for an employee going out on $100 is significant to me for an urgent care. But I understand trying to get them to call and all
Right.
of that. But number two, I'm not sure. A little savings might be too minimal to feel like a punishment in my mind.
Sure.
What
I agree.
what is ancillary expenditures really? What does that comprise of?
So that would be, do you want to explain ancillary when we're talking
Yeah,
about?
so common labs, imaging, you know, knee injections, things like that, that typically are a few dollars in a wholesale arrangement. Those are ancillary expenses. So they're things that we do typically in clinic for the members that have a cost to them that we pass straight through to the city.
And then I saw somewhere, I think somewhere that the international RX savings were around 100,000 and change, right? But the RX plan pays out such an exorbitant amount. How do we increase those savings, or is that kind of the maximum that it seems that it's going to get?
So for international RX, we're decreasing the savings significantly for a certain amount of drugs that are on a limited formulary.
Okay.
If you're looking for overall pharmacy savings, because we have such an aggressive formulary, the highest or the biggest bang for the buck is going to be if you actually increase the copays. Now, if you do that though, you run the jeopardy that people will not stay in compliance with their medication because
we
they
don't
can
want
no
that.
longer afford the monthly med. So it's really, you have to balance that. Because we definitely have a very strong medication adherence. That's something that in future reporting, I think we're going to be able to show you much more aggressively. But if you're going to try to attack that pharmacy side, copays are really the only way that you can do that. And you can do that Right now, we have a flat copay because we don't want there to be an unknown at the pharmacy. We want them to know they're either going to pay that copay or less than when they go to get that script. If you change it to some of the more aggressive ways, which is like a percentage,
Yeah.
then people don't know what they're going to pay, and they're going to stop going to the pharmacy because they're going to be afraid. However, it is an approach that we can consider in the future if needed.
Yeah, no, that's good explanation of kind of the overall cost and why
Yeah.
it sits where it sits, so.
I got a question on the high-cost members.
Yes.
I know for the first 6 months, it's been at 10. Previous year was at 28, so we're making this kind of correlation that we're trending below. Do we know 6 months into the prior year what that number looked like? Was it, because I'm sure that it
Sure.
doesn't trend just a straight line.
Sure. So I'm gonna report from the paid side, which is gonna be a little bit different than the numbers that you see in there, because as she indicated, her reporting is from the incurred dates. So from the paid dates, if you'll remember a couple meetings ago, I told you we actually had 52 high-cost claimants we were paying for in the last fiscal year. That was one of the reasons why the number was so big. As we looked at this year, the first 6 months, and compared it to the first 6 months of last year, we were still trending 50% of where we had been on paid claimants. So 6 months in and full year in, we are expected to do much better this year. So we're very optimistic on that, because right now we're still sitting at 20 paid high-dollar claimants in this fiscal year. So we're doing, at the same time last year, we were at 42. So we're still trending less than 50% of where we were.
So the 50-some that were part of this high claim, do we track, are they just got better, or they?
That's a great question. I'm actually going to let her answer this
Okay.
because she has some information regarding those high-cost claimants that I
Okay.
think you might be looking for.
You had a lot of cancer treatment last year, which you don't have this year. So that has improved. Some of them are, there's a developmental disorder, high-cost claimant that probably is going to be, a continuing thing, but the cancers are down. The cancer treatment is down for this year. The high-cost claimants you've had this year are time-limited events like an injury or an accident.
Oh, okay.
So those are not going to be repeated
Yeah.
throughout the year.
Yeah. What other questions do we have? I got you here, Mayor.
There's a cost to retirees. How do retirees fit in the system? I just don't quite recall. Or how, is there a window?
We have their own fund.
There's their own fund, right?
And they have to, if they qualify for retiree per our pension definition, then they continue in the health plan under pre-65 or post-65 coverage. Post-65 coverage it's not a Medicare supplement. We actually compare what Medicare would have paid, and if our allowable is slightly higher than what Medicare would have paid, we pay the difference in that item alone. And they pay a full premium participation, unsubsidized for the most part. There is a small segment of PD that has a subsidy until they turn 65.
They get the benefit of the better rate, but they pay the full.
We're still paying in. Yeah, okay.
Any other questions?
Jolie, real quick, the two options for increase,
Correct.
do we know how many employees went to see the ER? I mean, do we have the numbers
Do you have the ER utilization?
Here, I can get you your
If
utilization,
if
but I
not,
don't
we
have it.
will when we present it for action item.
and the urgent care?
Yep.
Good to see. That way we can know.
We just have
Yeah,
rates.
and actually, we've trended a little better. I mean, without sounding badly, we're trying to curb bad behavior, for lack of a better word. Where you don't have to go to the ER, which is very, very expensive to the plan, especially now with Frontier, that you, like Jolie said, you could usually, not always, get the same, level of care and advice through a phone call than showing up at the ER. And let me just say this, one of the biggest reasons that management was okay proposing this, and it's up to you, is that we have low copays. And I'd like for Jolie to bring that information when we bring it back for action. The difference between us and most of our peers, we're just low. And so when you do that, you're kind of inviting that behavior to go into the ER.
Are we gonna take action during budget, after budget?
It'll be in August, during budget.
Okay.
Yeah, and the good thing is that we've already reviewed the health insurance. We're not looking for any kind of increase other than what you're seeing here, so this is just minimal. So we feel really good about where we are.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
And the utility board is out of here, unless we have another item.
Utility recesses. Oh no, adjourn. Okay, and we'll continue to item number 2, questions related to the regular meeting. Anyone?
No question.
Questions? Item number 3.
Mayor, we're gonna have Chief Victor present on the police training facilities and indoor firearms. We briefly touched on this with the commission here in the last several months, but we will have this discussion in the budget to look at this moving forward. And so we wanted you to hear this presentation before we got to budget so that you're not caught, with no information. And I'll tell you what we're gonna recommend, depending on your feedback, is that we look at designing this facility during this coming fiscal year and then looking to fund it in the future. That's why it's in front of you, so that you don't hear it for the first time during budget.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, the city manager mentioned this is a a subject matter we've been discussing internally for some time. And we thought we'd bring it forward during the budget process this year for as an introduction of a new project. The city manager felt it necessary to go ahead and introduce it earlier than budget so that you have a good basis of information before we get into the budget process. So the objective here today is simply to hopefully get some guidance from you to expand the proposal is to expand our current training facilities and to add an indoor firearms training facility. Hopefully the secondary determination we could make and some guidance from you today is hopefully to, as the process goes forward, and again, this is presented to you as if we're speaking to you during budget. The objective is to hopefully get your approval to proceed with design and hopefully build a McAllen Police Department indoor firearms training facility. The proposed site would be the McAllen Police Department Northwest Training Center and Community Network Center, that is at 2800 Oxford. The expected result is basically an expanded police department training campus. Now, there's always a question of need or want. The firearms training facility for McAllen PD is a need. And the why is because McAllen PD is authorized at 316, currently, at 316 sworn police officer positions. McAllen is the largest municipal police department in South Texas. State law requires firearms training and qualification upon and after licensing police officers. Every time we go through an academy process, we're licensing officers through that process. Every one of those, to get them there, they must go through a qualification process. The state law also requires that all police officers to complete annual firearms training and qualification as part of the continuing education requirements for police officers. Where a firearms training facility serves for a multifaceted training facility, firearms training and qualification activity result in the following, generally speaking. At least, on the average, we fire 160,000 rounds a year. That translates to 13,300 rounds a month and about 3,000 rounds a week. That is our regular firing process. Our current facilities is at what we call Bryan Road and 3 Mile. The hard red outline that you see up here, that is the current firearms training. It's an outdoor training facility. The property immediately south of there, that is also City of McAllen property as well. So the entire site that would be left open if we moved from there would be all of that property right there. To give you an idea of what our current training facility looks like, this is an aerial of that particular facility. We have 50-yard limited lanes, and we've limited that intentionally because to add safety to the area as it expands around us. We have 100 yards for a rifle, and we have 200 yards for rifle as well in that outdoor facility. The current facility is an outdoor facility. It is approaching 40 years of life. It is in the city of Palmhurst, and Palmhurst development has encroached and continues to encroach into the vicinity of the current facility. This variable has accelerated the end of life to this facility. We now have a development in congruent to the property line to ours right there, so we're right next door already. Palmhurst growth in and around the McAllen PD firearms training facility became the focus of concerns of the city of Palmhurst officials. In July 2000, Palmhurst city officials complained of more problems. And I'm just giving you some background here. We've been dealing with these for some time. It's one of the first things I dealt with when I came here. Complained of more problems. Understood the range firearms, that is, that the training facility would be closed down until further notice. That was the letter from them to us in 2000. The city of McAllen agreed to make certain improvements to the firearms training facility. In February 2002, we awarded a contract for $220,000 to improve errant round trapping, reduce bullet ricochets, and to contain the lead that is discharged at that particular site. In March 2002, we added more improvements totaling $24,600. And in August 2002, the city of Palmhurst toured the facility and gave us basically a satisfaction with the improvements, and we proceeded to resume use of the facility. These are some facilities that are in the area. We have retail, we have junior high, we have an elementary school, we have faith facilities. Palmhurst growth and development has tightly encircled the McAllen PD firearms training facility. Private property contiguous to the McAllen firearms training facility is now developed. The McAllen firearms training facility is 1,000 feet to Bryan Road. The McAllen firearms training facility is 1,200 feet to a residential area. The McAllen firearms training facility is 2,000 feet to Sherilyn Rafael Cantu Junior High and other educational facilities, and there are other proximities in the area. The goals that we're proposing is to replace the current McAllen PD firearms training facility with an indoor firearms training facility, and to defer the use of the site where we're at right now for McAllen purposes. In previous considerations, those considerations at one time included maybe the sale of that property and make some money to buy them, build a new one. But again, that was years ago. So the design, build, and add an indoor firearms training facility to the northwest, that is Oxford Police Training Center. And the proposed site would look something like this. We're proposing a 28,300 square foot facility. I'll explain that in a minute. And it would fit somewhere around there. This is just a rough idea. It's a sketch. It's just kind of, we moved it in there to show that it fits there. The actual facility looks something like that. And the project goal, the goal of that facility would be an indoor firearms training facility, which is a 15-lane facility. 5 of those lanes are what we call dual use. That is 100-yard lanes that can be used for 50 yards as well. And then the standard 10 50-yard lanes for a standard qualifications process. So as a result of those 10 and 5, we could use 15 for qualification purposes as well. So it's a 15-lane facility. Flexible use, precision firearms, it would allow us to meet the required qualifications process, reactive exercises, tactical training, lighting and control systems. The facility we are proposing would include classroom space, staging stations, cleaning station, and an armory. The reference model that we use for this is what we call the Denton PD model. It is exactly what we have described. It is 28,300 square feet. It has all the facilities we mentioned to you already this afternoon. It has 5 100-yard lanes and 10 50-yard lanes. If we combine the 10 and the 5, that makes 50, the capacity for 15 50-yard lanes. It includes all the classroom space, the armory, the cleaning facilities, all the things that come with that are required for a firearms training facility. We believe that the design cost is somewhere around $850,000, and we believe that the build, and this is an estimate, it would be $8.4 million would be our estimate at this point in time. Denton's project was bid out in 2018. It came in a little bit under $6 million. Built in about 8% a year since that time to get to the 8.4 that we're at right now, and maybe next year as well, one more year. And then 10% for the design cost of the facility. The project outcome would then be our current firearms training facility has reached end of life, including encroaching residential development, projectile and noise mitigation requirements. Construction of the proposed indoor facility will provide us a replacement facility for the current firearms training facility. It needs to be mentioned as we go forward that when we go to an indoor facility, there are going to be post-construction maintenance costs that we don't have now because of air filtration systems, surface cleaning, trap keeps, lead, all that kind of stuff that go. And we estimate that we could add as much as $90,000 or so to our maintenance budget going forward by adding an indoor facility. It's just, it just comes with it. Something we don't have right now because we've got an outdoor facility. If we go indoors, then we've got to deal with all the lead removal, air systems, and the maintenance that come with an indoor facility. So I mentioned that only so that we don't leave that out as we go forward, future consideration. Mr. Mayor and members of the commission, this is, I think we're at the mercy of right now of Palmer's telling us no more. It could happen any day. I'll mention this, that some of the firearms qualification we must do is nighttime qualification. We've had to move some of that to, let's say, sheriff's office facilities because the neighbors complain about nighttime qualification around there. So that is the kind of experiences that we're having right now, and that move us in a direction towards proposing this facility. In the last year and a half or so, South Texas College has also mentioned the fact that they are interested in building one. They could look at this and build onto it and maybe partner, or they could do something different, or we could go all together. I didn't want to leave that unmentioned to you because they've mentioned that to us, and they're interested in maybe exploring a partnership with not only developing this, but maybe even a grander facility. So, but for us, the base will be something along these lines. I will take your questions.
But if anybody else interested in maybe partnering up, have we talked to anybody? Would we be interested in that?
There are literally thousands of police personnel that include federal, state, and local agents that need to meet this kind of firearms training. So the need is absolutely there. If we open up that discussion, we could probably bring some partners in. But, it's a matter of the things being right for them, and cost-wise and accessibility, the use of it, and all those kind of things.
Well, the things being right for everybody, but mostly us first. But I think that'd be worth trying to look into. $8 million is $8 million. If we can share it with somebody else and utilize it, and we get the full benefit, I think it's something to explore.
And we can certainly explore this with this being the base, and then if this was the base and we're going to add more to it, obviously if we're going to do something grander than this, then we need to look at other than Oxford as a site, because the bigger it is, the more ground space you need and the more parking you need. So, so that would be the consideration that we would make. But certainly, It's,
And you got, what about the, I guess the elimination of the 200-yard range is not that critical? I mean, that's probably pretty
100 would suffice for
would
us.
suffice. And Denton, probably about same size city-wise, but they do have 100 less officers than McAllen. Is that, would their model be suitable for your size and our growth?
Yes, sir. We believe that this model would work for us, and it is consistent with what we have now. We've got 10 lanes, and we're only using 6.
Okay.
We intentionally narrowed that to 6. If you recall, about 2, 3, 4 years ago, Edinburgh had an incident where one round went off. And so when that happened, we picked up on that and we said, you know what, we need to stay within 6 lanes. So we're using only 6 right now. So we believe that the 10 lanes that we're proposing here, plus the 5 dual use, would be adequate for us.
And
How many indoor facilities are there in Hidalgo County and in the valley?
I know of one that is an indoor shooting range in the far area.
yeah, point blank.
Yeah, but I don't know, I've been in there and seen it. I don't know if it meets the requirements that we have to qualify personnel.
I like the fact that you mentioned about partnering with something else.
Yeah.
I kind of tongue-in-cheek reference about revenue opportunities.
Right.
That really started getting me that if we can create a city facility that not only supports and meets the requirements that we need to make sure that our officers are best prepared and certainly certified in firearms training, but have an opportunity, like you mentioned, for state, federal agents to also have and receive the same training and also maybe with the potential to generate revenue from it. I think there's an opportunity, but you're right. If that's the goal that we're looking at, maybe very long-term, where we start with this for our own and then we expand over time, then I don't believe the Oxford site would be best. Is that your opinion?
Yeah, I think if we're going, I think we should have an idea what our master plan might be.
Right.
So that we can build from that. If we're going to go down that path, if you want us to explore that, we can certainly do that and see how realistic it is. And then between now and budget, you can tell us what.
And Chief, I want to be very clear. This would not be open to the general public. It would be just to.
No, that's got to be,
Yeah,
and
that's an
that's
absolute.
that's one of the considerations when you go multi-agency is we have a facility and we constantly use it. So if we're going to get into multi-agency use, and we've got to figure out all those problems before we get into it, to make sure that we built into the MOUs or whatever we end up doing to ensure that we are going to be able to use it when we want to use it. And that could be as a result of either one general use or one facility built in such a way where, A, B, and C range or something like that could be built into that. So.
The only other thing is if we were to proceed utilizing Denton as kind of a base model, that we communicate with them to find out maybe what they would have changed, what they might have done a little bit different.
We've been up there.
Yeah.
We've been to a few ranges in the last few months, just to kind of cover that kind of ground. So we have some ideas about some of this, and some of those thoughts came back in the maintenance list that we mentioned.
Oh, I see.
Questions? Was this interesting, Chief?
We'll explore
let's
that
look at
further
it,
and give you.
Excellent.
Thank you,
Chief. And we'll recess into executive session. We have about 15 minutes.
This concludes the workshop of the McAllen City Commission. Workshops are held every second and fourth Monday of the month, convening at 4 p.m. at the McAllen City Commission chamber on the 3rd floor at McAllen City Hall.
Chakas, they're kind of like chickens. They're like a mix between a chicken and a roadrunner. So they're on the ground a lot of the times, they run around, they chase each other, they're squawking, and then they'll get up into the tall trees and just emit this very loud chorus. The males and females sing together, and they go, cha-cha-lak, cha-cha-laka, cha-cha-lak, cha-cha-laka, and that's why they have that name.